Good afternoon. My name is Suzette, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Service Management Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I will now turn the call over to Ms. Christine Garner. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hello. I'd like to welcome everyone to the CA Service Management Global User Community meeting for today. It looks like we've had a pretty good turnout, so we're excited about that. As the operator mentioned, this call is recorded, and normally after, for those of you that maybe haven't attended a user group meeting before, those recordings are posted onto the user group website a short time after the meeting. It's usually available within a few days after the meeting. So if there was something you saw that was interesting that you want to refer back to or get information on, you can get it off of the user group website. One of the things that has come up since the last meeting is CA World has been announced. It's going to be at the Mandalay Bay again this year in Las Vegas from April 21st through the 24th. The website is the same as it has been the last few CA Worlds, www.caworld.com. This last week, the call for speakers went out, so if you have something you'd like to present at CA World, go on to www.caworld.com and go ahead and put your submission in because they are taking those topics now for review. Early registration, where you can get a $200 discount, is available through February 1st. And as a member of the user group, you're also eligible for a $200 user group discount that can be combined with the early registration discount, so you would get a total of $400 off if you register before February the 1st. We are planning on holding a user group meeting during CA World. It's normally posted in the schedules, the normal itinerary schedules that you go sign up for. So we don't have the room, obviously, or anything yet, but that'll be announced at a later date and put into the itinerary. Now, if you have the Service Management User Group will be giving 2 opportunities to win a free registration to CA World. It doesn't, of course, include travel, you know, your hotel, air, or incidentals, so your company would have to cover that. But you could save on the registration. We're giving 2 options. The deadlines for entries for these is Friday, November 16th. The first option will be holding a drawing to be give away one of the registrations. If you're interested in submitting your name for that drawing, you can email me at christine.garner@elbitsystems-us.com. The second registration, we're looking actually for someone from the user community to present in our January user group call. You know, I think people find it very interesting to see what other companies are doing, how they've utilized the product, maybe you know, overcome issues or whatever. There's unlimited number of topics that could be covered. So if you're doing something that you'd like to present or you think would be a good topic, again, go ahead and email me with the topic you'd like to cover. If your topic's selected and you present in the January meeting, your registration to CA World will be covered. So that's 2 options to potentially get the registration fees for your trip to CA World covered. So it would make getting approval hopefully easier for you to attend. For those of you that have not attended CA World before, or those who have, it is a great opportunity outside of seeing roadmaps of where the products are going and being able to talk to CA experts. It's also a great place to network and get to know your peers. And I know I've run into people from time to time that have overcome things that I've been trying to deal with and made great connections by trading business cards and being able to bounce ideas off of one another. So it's a great event for doing those things also. During today's meeting, we have two presenters. Roger Morse, who's the senior, is with CA. He's a senior principal product manager for CA Service Desk Manager, and also John Eulery, who's the senior principal product manager for Service Catalog. Today's meeting is going to be a panel discussion. We highly encourage participation. You can participate using the instructions the operator gave to ask through the phone or through your Q&A dashboard within the live meeting. I'd like to thank Roger and John in advance for putting this together. We tossed through different topics, and one of the things that comes up a lot is Service Desk and Service Catalog and the landing page with that. How do you tell your users where to go and that type of thing. So Roger and John have been kind enough to put the presentation together for us. So now I will turn it over to John Ullery. John?
Thank you, and really appreciate this opportunity. The one thing that would be great, and it's hard because we have a lot of people, but it actually leads into Christine indicating, the fact that people have done things that are successful and people have struggles they've shared that other people may have addressed. If you look at the agenda we have here, the one thing that we are hearing a lot of people talk about is the fact that beyond incidents, people have large user communities that maybe have requests, or they may have communities where the difference between a request or an incident or a change, it's just not part of the vocabulary. I'm just a business person that has a need, and IT and service management is connected to that need. So with those things being extremely common, what I'd like to start with is an open discussion and really encourage people to talk there. Then we thought we'd walk through a couple of examples of how we address some of the issues people have now and what some of those issues may be, and continue discussion through that. And then Roger and I, talking about what service desk, what some service desk customers are using now in terms of landing page, what some customers are using for catalog as a landing page, what some people are doing in terms of creating their own web page. And we'll actually talk through some examples of that. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the futures. Some more and more people are adopting OpenSpace. I think most people are familiar with that. And then we have Catalog 12.8 coming up, and we've put a lot into thinking about the catalog capabilities more than the catalog interface. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So that's sort of like the nutshell of it. Let me jump over to another presentation to get this kicked off. First, as you guys often see, we'll put up a slide saying that we are going to talk about some things in the future. As a matter of fact, really ask and hopefully get some feedback on, yeah, that makes sense. But whenever product managers like Roger and I talk about the futures, it's important that we show this slide so that we make sure that we appropriately set expectations, because things can change and likely will change one way or another. So let's first just start off with the perceptions. What is important when we're thinking about catalog and service desk together? And does anyone, right off the bat, in terms of participation, does anyone want to offer up some current use cases that they're either addressing or want to address? And operator, hopefully we can have the line open for if people want to interject here, because we would really like to have some open discussion here.
Okay, so would you like me to open all the lines, sir?
Sure, and then we'll sort of sort through it from that point.
Okay, so all lines are open.
So right off the bat, is there somebody that would like to step forward and talk about the current challenges they have, or things that they would like to do, or things that they have done? It's okay if you don't, because we can keep going. But I would, I think we'd all benefit if we can get a discussion. All right, let me ask a little more specifically. When we think about catalog and service desk together, we hear a lot of issues in terms of the org chart, in terms of attachments. There's a lot of nitty-gritty things that there are various ways you can do it, sometimes varying on the implementation, sometimes varying on the service offering, sometimes varying on the approval processes within an organization. But at the highest level is the major focus a single point of contact. So when I'm thinking about my relationship to IT, and whether it be incidences or change or a request, I'm looking for that single point of contact. Would you think that that's the number one issue? Roger, from your experience so far, do you see that on the service desk side as the number one thing that you've seen customers request, that a single point of contact?
Yes, certainly. I think it's changed over time, and the pendulum has swung both ways. What we see a lot in the service management space is customers that really want to drive down to a tier 1 or a tier 0 type of support model, and to do that, you really need to have some type of a self-service process in place. And there's all types of definitions of self-service, and certainly Service Desk Manager provides a number of them. But what I've seen over the years is that we've gone from a basic inbound, a single number, and someone answers the phone and records the incident and says, we'll assign it and someone will help you as soon as they get around to you, to more of a round-robin model where people can call in and the person that answered the phone can actually do first-level triage and perhaps some basic troubleshooting to see if there's something that's simple for to get that person up and running again. And if it's not real simple, then they can pass it on to a next level. But it really all comes down to how do the people that are using the various aspects of technology in the organization, how do they get the help that they need? And whether that is sending an email, whether that is picking up the phone, whether that is I worked at a lot of companies where you actually had a couple people on the floor who were dedicated to that floor, and you'd go down and you'd tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I need help with XYZ, and they would come down and they'd help you right there. So sneaker net basically. Or is it a method of capturing institutional knowledge and then being able to share that knowledge out back to the overall organization? There's a lot of points on the compass around this, and the pendulum has swung over the years from one extreme to the other. But I think more and more organizations are really trying to understand how they can really be as transparent and available to the constituents that are using the services that IT provides. And whether that's, single point of contact, whether that's self-service, you can call it a number of different things, but I think ultimately it's all the same. But it's really important so that everyone in the organization knows, hey, I can do X, and I know that I'm going to get some type of response in a fairly decent period of time.
Thanks, Roger. Operator, I'm getting a chat that some people feel as though it seems like the lines may not be open. But to add to Roger's thing in terms of how people perceive service, when we're talking about service management, we do have a few comments on the chat that I think are important and sort of support what Roger was saying. Randy is indicating that they've got the challenge of self-service, which I think, and I put in the slide here, this combination of is single point of contact the same as self-service. But the challenge that Randy is indicating is that there's a challenge of self-service and what the business users expect to see from a UI perspective, the non-IT business users. So there's this growing expectation. Years ago, everyone would say, oh, it's got to look like Amazon. Now they're saying, well, when I go to get help, I don't put it in a cart. So the cart analogy doesn't work anymore based on the non-IT expectations. So I think UI is one of them, and Randy, thank you for that. I think we can discuss that a little bit. Lindsay indicates that right now Service Desk is internal only, and it's a single place for employee requests is the goal they'd like to get to. So a single, the single starting place for what everyone wants to do. Some of them are complex, and there's a lot of coordination, which when we think about automation means that either we know what that process is, or we have human to system and human to human support when we fulfill a process. And then there's also the thing that these may be several tickets, and then when you show the complete fulfillment, you need that, but you also may need to have incremental fulfillment from a status perspective. So those are two things that have come over the questions. Are the lines now open, and would anyone like to talk a little bit about their challenges or maybe things that they're doing?
Hey, John, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, John, this is Rhonda Williams. I'm with LPS in Florida.
Hi.
Hi, and I work with the catalog here on our side, and I know some of the challenges that we have. One is, the single point entry like you were talking about. Some people are like, well, why don't we just enter it straight in Desk? If our forms are going to be, asking so much, why don't we just go ahead and put it into Desk? We have to explain to them about, trying to get required fields and having a single point where everybody goes in the catalog into the GUI environment, and plus the whole licensing with catalog versus Desk. So I know that's one thing, and I know a big one that we're dealing with is reporting. And even though we have extraction and we love extraction, we're having problems with or challenges with doing reporting at the field level of a form. So if they wanted to, we can run a report on how many services are requested, but then if we want to say, well, how many services of this with this particular item in this field, we're having challenges with that. I know our users we're having to do some stuff with the Boxy and stuff like that to kind of work around it, and pull it and parse it out of our description field. But I know that's one of the things that we're dealing with right now.
Sure. And so thinking about these things together, when you do a request, does every request generate a ticket?
Yes.
Hi guys, Claude joining.
Hi, welcome. Okay,
every request generates a ticket.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments?
Hi, this is Heather Strickland from Spectrum Health.
Hi, Heather.
And I think our challenge is while the new version has been helpful, very helpful in terms of the user interface, we still struggle with how to present essentially thousands of services to our users in a way that's easily navigatable and doesn't create just drop-down menus from hell. So I think, and we're not getting an enormous amount of sympathy from our business because they use things like Amazon every day, and they say, well, they manage to have, thousands of services, and it's really easy to use, and I have no training. So I share that on behalf of my business, and not because I think that's an easily solvable problem, but because we would appreciate any progress that you can continue to make in the interface.
I'll talk a little bit about that, but I have a follow-up question that sort of connects to what Roger was saying. When we think about categorization if we think about starting the point of contact and self-service, how does search and knowledge, right now when there's search and knowledge within Service Desk, it's not connected really to how you categorize request in catalog. Would people be looking for knowledge and related to search?
No, not out of the catalog. No, they don't, at least currently, without us trying to change how they process or interpret. They do not view knowledge as something that they order. They view applications or hardware, more substantive things as things that they order. If they're looking for knowledge, their interpretation is they would go into Service Desk, but that's a support tool.
So they would go to one versus the other. And right now, when your people very explicitly go from one to the other, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we basically, from the very beginning, we asked them, do you have something that's broken, or do you want something new? And then from there on, they're either on in one product or the other.
Right. Right. And back to the other question, on your request, does every request generate a ticket in your environment?
Yes, it does.
And so that the SharePoint portal would be the main point of entry.
Does anyone else have any comments, Tad? And remember, everyone's line is open. And all right, let's move on a little bit. The other one I just wanted to sort of touch on is when we look at this now, we obviously we've got the analyst role, and that's people seem to understand that very well from a service management and the IT support perspective. But there's a lot of other roles, and I think one of the questions on that came up was the idea of business users. Well, there's a lot of different business users. We have one customer where their business users are out on oil rigs. Or you may have contractors. We have all sorts of people that need service that may have various relationships to it. When we think about single point of contact and roles, is there a need right now to have different single point of contact? So it's not really single. It's single per role. Is that the kind of thing that people are thinking about and the kind of experience people have?
Hey, John, this is Ed Moxley from ADP.
Hi, Ed.
I think what we're seeing is different groups that are providing support through the catalog are looking for a unique user experience for each of their constituents. So not and what I mean by unique experience is a unique landing page that they can customize for their own purposes, with the overall experience for opening and submitting a request consistent. So that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing a single look service catalog, but we're seeing people asking for different looks to the service catalog from a UI perspective, where they can post their own information.
And part of that, I'm assuming, is really to sort of the attraction to these are my services.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Part of it is also, they all serve unique constituents, so they want to be able to provide their unique information out on the main page, on the landing page when they hit that service catalog. So if there's documents or there's notifications that need to be communicated back out to their users, they want to be able to communicate that out to them from a single point.
Okay. Let me go forward a little bit, but let me make sure that people still feel like they can interrupt and talk through. Let's keep moving a little bit. I dug this up. This is not new, and probably shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. As a matter of fact, we just heard that, the separation of I have something that's broken, or I don't have something and I want it. That's been the separation. People have approached this different ways so far. So the reason I put this up, some people have said, okay, well, we'll still have a single point. Others will say, no, we'll tell the customers up ahead of time that if it's something that's broken, you go here. If it's something you need, you go here. And that's worked for them. Other customers have said, I need to abstract that whole thing. So that single point of contact, I'm going to create my own web interface. And I'm going to ask a few questions up front, and I'm going to effectively abstract catalog or tickets or service desk from the end user perspective. The analyst obviously is going in through the other one, but I effectively abstract it to a web interface. And to the point that Ed just made, I could also customize this as needed. It could be per line of business. We have examples where customers have done this. Everything in catalog and the user interface is exposed via web services. Everything in service desk you can expose, so you can, dynamically call it through a web service. So it's there, but all that's always custom. And so when people say, well, what's the best practice for it? CA, we've got examples of what people have done. Sometimes those examples are proprietary, but it's really varied on what people have wanted to do. So it's not at a point where we're saying, the prescriptive best practice to accomplish this is this. We got it nailed. Right now, our experience with enterprises mostly has been variable. But does anybody have any comments on this, sort of mock-up of the simple? Is there anything really crazy that should be considered when we're talking about this?
Hi, this is Claude from GE Healthcare. I'm assuming with your graphic here in the area of the single point of contact, are you referring to a CA module that's being proposed, or are you just kind of fleshing out what we had thoughts on this issue? What's the plan for that? Because I'm definitely interested. We have a custom dashboard that sits in front of the standard request interface that just wasn't working for us. That included a lot of drop-down menus and a web of options for a customer to understand what area they're going to be dropped into. Is that?
That's what I'm asking from the perspective of getting what people are doing. There are some things we are doing that I'll talk a little bit about as we move forward. But that's the kind of experience I'm looking at. There's a couple of other things, if you look on this chart, that time has changed. So right now, for example, in our approval, is approval in the flow, or is approval something that should be completely separate? For example, I'm at an airport, I got 5 minutes. I know that if I don't approve of things, I'm holding them up, and I'm going to be on the plane for another 6 hours. But I've got a layover for an hour. Is the expectation that's a separate interface? I'm saying yes. But it's not as easy as just one flow here to fulfillment, I guess is my point. And to the point of that single point of interface, I think there's also an issue now of context that we can start thinking about. So what am I doing when I need something? And do I always go someplace?
Okay, so you're directing from a decision point. Is this a request or is this an incident?
I mean, the fact, most people, I came into work. I didn't come into work to do email, although it seems like it some days. I didn't come into work to, to file incidents. I didn't come into work to do requests. I came into work to do some things. Our incidents and requests naturally part of that process, and at this point, we tell you to go someplace to do these things. Is that, do you perceive opportunities to sort of interrupt or put things into more of a context of what we're doing? Would that be something that people would want today?
This is Heather from Spectrum Health.
Yeah.
I think, if I understand your question correctly, we have a strong desire for approvers to be able to approve without entering either system. And this comes up in the service catalog requests. This also comes up for change orders or change records that get opened and need approval from various folks. The approvers do not, almost to a person, do not want to log into either system. They want a very easy, preferably stay in email and just hit something that would function without them having to leave their email or whatever other their interface is on their mobile client.
Yeah, okay. And another thing that I've been hearing, because we've been doing, the CA's been looking at more prescriptive solutions as well, is this whole idea of the person who's doing approval is like, some of these people wear multiple hats. So I may be approving a security authorization, and it may be a ticket or it may be through a security system. I may be approving a project investment cost related to clarity. I may be approving a change order. I may be approving a request. do I really have 5 approvals, or is my desire going to be to have 1 approval? You know, are we ready? You know, is that the kind of thing that people will say yes? Matter of fact, my customers, if I can implement that, that's something of value that you know, we'll pay for. We would love for you to do that. Is that a high priority now?
This is Heather again. Yeah, I think from our perspective, it would be. Improving that approver interface would be a huge one for us.
This is Jennifer Purdue from Lender Processing Services. That would be a huge improvement for our organization as well. I have that complaint daily.
Agreed.
Okay. Roger, do you have any comments on this before I go on?
No, but there was a question that came through the Q&A. Piyush was asking, in the diagram, does the request ticket represent an SDM request or a catalog request? I think that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Is it we're trying to abstract that away. It's not at that point. It doesn't matter to the person that has submitted the request. They shouldn't care whether it's SDM or catalog. We're going to hopefully put some other logic downstream that's going to make that decision for them. And so I think it's important to understand that what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to take these two very, very similar yet very different approaches between catalog and service desk, and we're trying to figure out how do we mash them up in order to allow the people that are trying to do the things they need to do with IT to not have to worry about whether it's catalog, whether it's service desk, is it a request, is it an incident, because they don't care, right, John? All they care about is I either need something or I have something that needs to be fixed. Those tend to be the two big use cases. And then, of course, we heard from other people, the folks that are just doing, basic approvals, yes, no, 1, 0, approved, denied, whatever the Boolean operator is. They don't want to have to go into these more complex systems like catalog or like service desk manager. They just want to be able to either reply through email or perhaps get some type of notification on a mobile device, whether that's a phone or whether that's a tablet. There's lots of issues around both of them, but all I want to do it maybe is click a link or press a button and the problem is taken care of. I have approved or I have denied. I think I heard that from both Heather and Rhonda, if I heard that correctly.
Yes, this is Heather, and we agree strongly. And I think also the same comment applies to our usage of Clarity, for what that's worth.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it, yeah.
I think, also for those that have asset managers, so I think, of course, there's approvals there as well. I think the other thing to point out on the tickets is, and it came up a little earlier, is this whole idea of complex requests. And I'll use an automation one. So most people on this call that have responded have said that when they do a request, it generates a ticket. And sometimes a request will generate multiple tickets. We also have some situations where we're talking about runbook automation that are being front-ended as requests. So what I want to do is I want to open up a new branch. And that new branch may stand up servers. It may, may do like 50 different things. I want an expectation of when I can open it, but I also want to see the progress and status at certain levels. Some of those will be tickets because I want to manage them from a change perspective. Some of them may be just pure automation. So increasingly, the user expectation of, wait a second, this is what I want. And it's not a discrete request. I didn't want to have to go in and make 15 requests to open a new branch. I love the idea that you're able to streamline it together, and I could do a request. In service management, the most common one of these has been onboarding. And, of course, what we find out is getting too prescriptive on onboarding just means that it's a good starting point, but everyone has their own. I provision training based on their role. I give them a parking pass. I give them a desktop, a iPhone, and, access to various SharePoints. I can have a whole list of things, and I can conglomerate them I can have multiple approvals with that. I can generate tickets as needed. And basically, I can meet the need from a bundled perspective. So the chart's a little simple by looking like it's one thing. And it may not be a ticket. Bottom line, agreeing with Roger, the person requesting doesn't care because they don't really, a lot of things they're asking for, it's not that they want to do those things. They want the result of what doing those things will do for them to do their job. Let's talk a little bit about today's, landing page experience. And already we've heard that some people are indeed on the call today abstracting this. But the most common one right now is, one of the common ones is SDM as a landing page. And it pretty much is a link out and go to. Does anyone have any comments on this?
Hi, this is Dennis Sanak from SuperValue. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just comment on this. As we implemented this landing page, but we did do a number of modifications. It seems like a lot of it was set up more from the IT perspective as opposed to the business user perspective. Now, if you ask one of our just business users what an incident is, they can't tell you. But as someone earlier said, if you say, hey, I want to report something that's not working or report something that's broken, they understand that terminology. So it doesn't seem very business friendly.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other issue we have here when we look at the existing tickets, we don't have the information about requests. So you don't have one place to look. The other thing, even in that confusion that people touch upon, and then I think they get a little concerned about how complex it might get. But say I report an incident because my laptop's not working. It ends up that they find out that the battery is wrong, and by interacting with the service desk, I find that out. But then it's off warranty, and so then do I start all over again and do a request for a new laptop because it's off warranty?
No, so this is Heather from Spectrum Health again. Absolutely not. We are in the process of implementing a manual process in our help desk where we have specified by executive edict that we will not ask our customers to request the same thing more than once. And if they use the wrong format to request assistance or request a product, then we will handle migrating that request to where it needs to be for our purposes, because to all the other speakers' points, our customers do not care and they do not want to know, and they just want what they need, and they want us to make it happen.
So Heather, when you're looking at that problem, and I think a lot of people have that problem, and from a customer satisfaction perspective, redoing is just a pain, and nobody
Absolutely.
wants to do it.
And our process change is only process-oriented. It's strictly manual, and our help desk is eating it on behalf of our customers because it's that important.
So do you then report the status back through service desk?
They report it back however they can, but then they try to let the customer know. But even that is much more transparent than our customers would like. They don't want to care about whether it's a ticket or an incident or a request or any of that, and they go there only reluctantly.
Got it. I think those are excellent comments. Any final comments on this? Because we'll move through a couple examples, and then I want to get some comments on some things we're looking at doing.
Hi, this is Tony from St. Joseph Health. One little final comment about the service desk landing page. This landing page is not very customizable, I would say. You can change the verbiage around it, but it's kind of extremely hard to move things around or hide certain things from this landing page. And from what I see, previous versions of my service desk, this landing page hasn't changed much since the older versions.
So good feedback, thank you. This is Roger. No, it has not changed much because we've been focused on another approach to self-service, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But it's interesting that how you talk about this, because somebody else mentioned something about the landing page, and they're saying, how come announcements are in the lower right corner? And that's just where we ended up putting them. The original intent of the Service Desk Manager end-user self-service page, which is what we're looking at here, was really to provide, yes, it's very functional out of the box. Is it pretty? We can talk about pretty and whatnot, until the cows come home. But it's very functional, lots of stuff there. The idea was to provide an example, and then hopefully customers would take this and say, okay, well, that's a nice idea, but it doesn't work in my organization, or I want this to be somewhere else. And then using web services, they could decide, oh, well, I'm going to embed announcements into my, for example, my SharePoint landing page. That's just an example, right? So while we created the page to be highly functional and to be usable, there was also the secondary idea on our behalf, and maybe we hadn't really communicated that very clearly over time, is that this was a functional example of how you might be able to use the capabilities of Service Desk in your own environment. And what we saw over time is that people were actually adopting the page as is, and that was somewhat of a surprise to us, and so we've learned from that, and we are taking that information and feedback from customers very close to heart, because we have a different way of approaching the problem now, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So thank you very much for that feedback.
Okay, thank you.
And I think when we're talking about UIs in today's world, the feedback is important, because this interface, like let's say with the existing catalog interface, is portal-like. Is probably the best way of doing it. It is a user interface to a product, but it has aspects of being portal-like. So this is the landing page that some people are using for catalog, and included in this, they might have enter a ticket as a service offering, and that will open up Service Desk, or some people are actually making that service offering in that form, and we automate the updating, of generating a ticket. And of course, for any of these requests, as people have already said, tickets can be generated. But generally here this is Service Catalog 12.7 default landing page, which probably most people haven't implemented this yet. But the idea is to focus on the service. The status is relegated to the upper right-hand corner. But again, in terms of customizing this is okay in terms of categorization, to Heather's point. It's still hard to determine the categorization through search and favorites as it's laid out in this form. But does anybody have any comments, or is anyone using this kind of interface for the SDM catalog integration point, the landing page?
Hi, this is Brian from Siemens. We actually created our own in Service Desk.
So you created your own page to have access to service requests.
Yeah, our users, again, no one wants to know whether it's a change order or a request. That's what we use in our facility. So we created a graphical display, much like you're seeing there, actually on a new tab with the Service Desk Manager, and our users simply click on a link that opens up the ticket that does what they want it to do. They have no clue whether they're opening a change order or a request. They just know they selected a service from the catalog we created. They value the fields and hit save.
So catalog of requests with icons that you click on in a new page you created in Service Desk.
Right.
Yeah. So the other one, no other comments on this, is we have customers, and this is similar, where actually I had a lot of examples, but I didn't have time to get permission from anybody, so I had a simple one blocked up. But basically, simple things, where they click on some tabs and they get some drop downs, and there's instructions that are given to them directly, and they are able to move through, and based on what they do, they try to keep the format of the HTML page consistent, regardless of what it is you're asking for. and to provide certain information. In the background, again, all of these have a similar format where you have, tabs and drop-downs and either radio boxes or checklists, and the HTML that they created for each of the services or categories of incidences they may create. So we actually have quite a few people using this. Other customers ask us, saying, well, can you tell us prescriptively what you recommend? And we've never had a specific best practices other than, when you build a web page, you should, having a consistent user interface is good. So in this case, it's, really 3 sections that you'll see, information, drop-downs, information, selections, or form. Other than consistency, we haven't really had anything prescriptive. Anybody on the call today have their own portal? And any comment that they want to add about having a portal interface to front end both catalog and service desk?
So, John, this is Ed Moxley from ADP again. We did have our own portal where we front-ended service desk, and it consisted of just a drop-down of all of the selections that people could ask for. Wasn't a bad idea, and it lasted us for about 5 years, and then we took on Service Catalog, and we took a different approach. We went from the user perspective, and we categorized users into a couple different categories. One was, I need help with something, right, whatever that is, or I need help from a group that I know I need help from, or a technical catalog, which is really just for internal associates. So as far as people coming into a portal or an experience, that's kind of how we categorize ours. I don't know if that makes sense, and I'll be willing to answer any questions about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Ed or any other examples?
Thank you.
This is Heather Strickland from Spectrum Health. I think from our perspective, we were very excited to see the new offering that you showed before for the latest version, Service Catalog. That was a huge step forward for us. To your point about why, back in your product development history, you haven't been prescriptive. You've allowed the customers to personally, to configure based on web services or whatever, basically to develop, if you will, their own front end. We have, I think, for many years now felt a strong need to have that solution, but the reason that we invested in CA was so that we didn't have to do development. We don't have the resources. We're very leanly staffed. And so a huge piece of the value proposition for the CA tools is, one, you have a single MDB, which gets you a tremendous amount of integration without manual effort on our part. But also the solutions come essentially pre-configured, which means we don't have to create a development overhead or maintenance burden on our very few staff members.
Yeah, good point. One of the areas where this has been of particular interest has been with the global systems service providers and the managed service providers, where they were able to sort of overlay their branding. But to your point, that's their business.
Right.
So those are good points. Let's go ahead and move forward. First, before we jump to this, and I'll turn it over to Roger for a moment to cover the questions. But how many people are familiar with OpenSpace, and is there anyone on the call using OpenSpace today? All right.
It's familiar, but not using.
Okay. So generally, there's an attraction that we have found, and we did some investment related to the idea of having a landing page based more on collaboration and interaction to the business user. You want to talk a little bit about some of the experiences we're seeing and from this perspective, Roger?
Right. So what we've done here is we have taken the concept of social media, whether that's a Facebook or a MySpace, or a LinkedIn or a Pinterest, and there's all types of things out there, and everyone's doing all kinds of different things. But we focused on the concept of collaboration and communities to be able to allow the service consumer to join these communities and to have conversations with their peers, other people in the organization, not necessarily service desk analysts or catalog analysts, but people who are down the hall or another building that have similar interests in using technology or in doing things with technology that will allow them to have that collaboration, that communication in a social media setting to hopefully allow the capture of the wisdom of crowds and to be able to share information throughout the organization. Because what we've heard from many, many customers is that that when it comes to helping the end user with something more simplistic, that tends to be a drag on what's happening in the service desk, because the service desk is struggling to be able to keep up with the volume of inbound requests, problems, whatever it might be. And so many customers are trying to figure out a way of pushing back out to the organization methods to allow them to drive down to what we call tier 0 or fully deflective self-service in the organization. And OpenSpace is our introduction to address this particular type of problem. So, for example, iPads have become quite ubiquitous, and while many organizations are allowing the concept of bring your own device, BYOD, into their organization, they're not necessarily supporting those devices to a full extent. So you might have a lot of people who have iPads and they bring them to work and they get on the work wireless and they can check their email or whatever they want to do on their iPad. But then they have a question, well, how do I be able to do things and get to things when I'm not on the corporate wireless in the office? I'm sitting at home, or I'm sitting in Starbucks, and I want to get on my home wireless or the Starbucks wireless, and then I want to VPN in. And maybe the organization has created some knowledge around that. Maybe they have a document for that explains how to do it. Or maybe they're saying, you know what, we're not going to support that because we just can't do that right now. But there's lots of other people in the organization who have been successful at that. And so you can use OpenSpace as a method for being able to do that crowdsourcing of knowledge. To say, hey, I just brought in my iPad. Is there a way I can get on VPN? Yeah, there is. Download this VPN client from the iTunes store. This is the information you need to put in, and it works just great. Don't think you're going to get support from the help desk because they're not able to support it this time, but I haven't had any problems and it's working just fine. So you're able to have that conversation, and people are not, hopefully not bothering the help desk with these types of things, because the help desk doesn't like to say no. The help desk is there to help. And if they've been told, no, we're not going to support these, and then that's the answer, and that makes the help desk look inefficient. It makes them look unfriendly. It makes them look like the preventer of IT services, if you will, for those of you that follow Dilbert. And so using collaboration and crowdsourcing, you're able to get a better insight and find the answer that you want. And maybe you find it faster. Maybe there's people that, there's other people that have had similar problems, and you have a bunch of people that are trying to solve this problem. Maybe they can solve it together. And then the next step is this really becomes an extension of the entire knowledge management function. So you're going to have analysts that are going to monitor these conversations to make sure that the right information is getting out there. And as they're doing that monitoring, that control, if you will, they're also capturing all the information that's going on so that they can then create that institutional knowledge. So if the organization has said, on day one, yeah, you can bring your iPad in, but we're not going to support it, and we're not going to be able to help you with any VPN stuff, But then, 60, 90 days later, or whatever it is, they say we have to change that policy. What do we know about VPNs on iPads? Oh, gee whiz, there's all this information out there. Let's construct knowledge around that we can then share, and that we can now control that knowledge, because we're going to put it into an institutionalized document that we can control and put through process, and then we can put that information all the way out there. So OpenSpace is really going to be the way that we're going to move forward with the whole concept of end-user self-service for the service consumer. And today it works with Service Desk Manager. It's offered as as a SaaS offering that can connect to your on-premise service desk, and then we're going to make OpenSpace available as an on-premise offering as well. That will be coming out pretty soon here, and by pretty soon I mean probably in the next within the next 6 months or so. We're working very hard on that. It will only work with Service Desk Manager day one, but we have huge plans to make this work not only with Catalog, but with many other things inside of the service management, service and portfolio management business unit at CA.
So let me take a break.
Go ahead, John.
We're at the end of the hour, and we can keep talking, but I know that people may leave. Number one, I would so much appreciate the input. But just to give you an idea also what's coming, if you see there's three major widgets here, and we're looking at, so instead of going to Catalog, what Roger just said about OpenSpace, I could have a category, and Heather, to your point, I can have a category of virtual desktop services. I can have this scrolling, within the category. I've got another category of application hosting. I don't have Catalog. I just got the catalog of services. And then I've got a widget of catalog requests that are in the same context as the service desk. But then also, and this is coming GBGA in January, beta is going now, some people are with this. In addition to OpenSpace, you could think about this in the context of any portal page or even SharePoint. And here we've got 3 examples of widgets. So I was going to talk more about some of the things that are coming, and Roger's going to talk more about OpenSpace. But we are at the end of the hour, so Christine, do we need to keep this an hour, or do we do a wrap-up and then keep talking if people can stay on? Christine, sort of deferring to your choice here as to where we proceed at the top of the hour here. And maybe you're on mute.
The only one on mute.
So Chris, what's your option on this?
Well, why don't we go ahead in case folks have to drop off, and if I can flip to the value poll real quick for those who need to go, and then I think you guys can go ahead and with anybody who'd like to remain.
Sounds good.
That way we can get how folks felt so far who might need to leave. And so folks, if you can just take a moment and just click the checkbox there, and then if you need to drop off, you can, and if you'd like to stay, then John and Roger will be on here. Just give it like a minute. Sure. And then when you guys are done, I'll flip back to the poll for anybody who might have missed it here.
And while we're doing that, John, just glancing over some of the stuff that's come through Q&A. I've been trying to keep up with it, so if you've posted something in Q&A and I haven't responded, I do apologize. There's quite a few things in there. But there is one item from Jose. So Jose is asking, do you have in the service catalog roadmap the ability for users to be able to change between business units without having to log out of service catalog and log back in? So I saw that from Jose, and I wanted to make sure that you were aware of it, John. You might not have an answer for him right now today, but maybe we can follow up with him if you don't have a firm answer at the moment.
Yeah, so with 12.7, we introduced this concept of on behalf of. So if a person has multiple business units for themselves, it's not on the roadmap. We would welcome that as a requirement. We need to understand the use case. But what you can do with 12.7 is if I want to do something on behalf of somebody who's in another business unit, I don't have to log out and log in if I have the requirement, if I have the permission to do something on behalf of them. When I say it, I'm doing it on behalf of, which is different than requested for. On behalf of will change my business unit perspective. So I see their catalog, their logical catalog, not mine, because I'm doing something on behalf of them. This has been very important for like administrative assistant type of roles, where the catalog of, maybe they've got 5 people that their administrative assistant's responsible for. Each 5 of those may have different logical catalogs. So when they're doing something on behalf of, Manager A, they see Manager A's catalog. They don't log out and log in to do this. They have the perspective of on behalf of. You could, with 12.7, do things on behalf of yourself. You could, create your catalog that way. But for the straight tenant or business unit, it's still a log in and log out. I would welcome any other use cases that need to be addressed in that area. So we flip back, and again, I'll just go back a few slides here to sort of set this up, because we do have a few things that I wanted to show and mention that are coming beyond OpenSpace. We have updated the user interface. So this is 12.8. This is, again, going into beta now. Some people on this call I know have participated. Feel free to contact me, john.eulery@ca.com, and we can talk about your participation if you'd like. But this is an X as a service, which has become. If you notice the scroll bars on the side here, of the middle part, I can scroll between categories of things. I can search in various places. To get to my request, I click on the upper right, and I go into my request. We still will support the traditional, where it's more request-centric from a request management perspective, and you see the status in the middle. You've got the featured, you've got the 3 panels, which many people are familiar with. We also introduced a new grid view. So the grid view can have a different layouts in terms of grid view plus featured plus my request plus status type of layout. And again, this you can scroll between categories easily. So my categories of application services, communication services, based on how many categories I have, I can scroll through these quickly, as well as having the search that's there and available. Forms, we invested a lot. We added things like slider bars, and we're continuing to invest in forms, making them smarter and smarter, and making it easier and easier to add policies to forms and to have more out-of-the-box examples to make the forms smart, so the forms talking to themselves, if you will, as you go through. We have the idea when you define a service of having a cartless service. So this is an example of going to the cart now, but I can also make this cartless. I also have more flexibility configuring in the service what shows up when I go to check it out and how I deal with things like attachments and what I show. I talked a little bit about the idea of having, instead of going to service catalog, making sure I can put the services where needed, like inside of OpenSpace or inside a SharePoint page. So the idea was to break down the user interface of catalog into widgets. And these are really snippets of UI functionality. So to the point before of instead of making you do it in your portal, that we actually do it and allow it to be content to a portal or to any web page. So in the OpenSpace, basically there's a portal framework behind OpenSpace, and we can layer in the content dynamically. I can just say, I want this content on this pane of glass. In the same way I would do it in OpenSpace is the way I would do it in LifeRay, an example of an open source portal product, or here's an example within SharePoint. And with these, we've shown several examples of how the existing widgets can be configured. We also did Service Designer and stuff like that, but I'll save that for another call. So basically, I wanted to point out these because from a self-service, single point of contact perspective, the idea, as Roger was saying, is we see a lot of attraction of having collaboration, search, knowledge, status, and access in the perspective that people want it. So, virtual desktop categories of services or, whatever it may be, in a single environment. We find a lot of demand for it, and we think that we're attracted to this. A lot of customers are attracted to it, so we'd love to get additional feedback from the community as well. Any comments or questions, and then we can wrap up the call?
Hallelujah. This is fabulous.
You like this, huh?
A lot, yeah. And I think the premise on which you've based this, which is you're giving us essentially Legos that almost anybody could put together in a way that's really attractive and engaging and much more internet-like is huge. This will quiet a lot of the noise that we get today.
So which aspect do you think will be of greatest interest?
I think the choice of different approaches, I'm not sure I can speak to as well. I would defer to my architects and developers, but or system administrators. But I think the options that you have presented us with in terms of very engaging, very colorful, very graphic oriented, not a lot of text kind of presentation options are really helpful. I could see us using the SharePoint approach because we do have an enterprise implementation of SharePoint, and that would leverage some of the familiarity we already have. But I could also see if us using, a more generic layout. They all kind of have a much more intuitive way of interacting, it appears, than what we have today. So I don't know that I can distinguish, but this is definitely the right direction.
What I'm expecting is that actually from the catalog contribution to this, I don't think it's going to be a single point. I think it will be multiple. I think there's going to be great attraction to the OpenSpace interface. And then maybe instead of this much that we're showing on this SharePoint page, I might have a SharePoint page that's focused on security within my organization. And I might have like 3 service offerings on that page.
Yeah, to the earlier commenters' point about each of some sub-departments wanting their own sort of look and feel or presentation page.
Right. So on that security page, I might have reset password, I might have request SharePoint access, and then, I've got a drop down as to, knows who I am, so it gives me categories, or request authorization for a report, that has its own approval cycle and it may generate a ticket or may not. But I can see service offerings dropped in context and see a service management single point of contact leveraging, an OpenSpace type of interface where I'm doing collaboration based on the services that IT is providing.
Yeah, it would be great to be given options. 3 nearly fully baked options as opposed to this is how the tool works and blow your brains out on developing additional pieces. That would be terrific.
We know what you blow your brains out. I'm sorry? Can you repeat that?
Sí, está instalado. Él tiene que configurarlo después.
I think it's somebody who doesn't realize they have an open line.
Okay.
Hmm?
Okay, so do we have further? Both Roger and I would welcome additional comments and input. We loved ours, don't we, Roger?
What we like more is for people to submit items up through the ideas on the community so that we can get the community to really rally around suggestions so that we can understand, so when someone puts an idea in through the community and people start commenting on that idea, that helps us understand, the larger impact that an idea may have. When we get a single DAR from a single person in a single organization, it gets very difficult for us to really understand, the greater, broader context. Because then what we have to do is we have to find out, okay, so we had somebody ask for X. Has anybody else asked for anything similar to X? We do that through the ideas in the community. What we're hoping is that those conversations, very similar to what we want to do with OpenSpace, that we can have those conversations around the ideas, and then people will vote on those ideas, and then as those ideas float up to the top because they have more votes, that's what really is going to start getting our attention in the future.
Excellent point. I think there's another one, too, coming up, the CA world. Christina indicated in the morning, but when we started the call, if maybe a panel of service desk and service catalog integration, maybe that's a topic somebody would like, please recommend it. I'm very open. If somebody wants to do a presentation with me about how they would expand catalog service offerings in a mixed environment or whatever, if somebody's got an idea that they want to do with me, I'm open to that. So again, that's coming up, and it'll be a great opportunity for us to move this discussion forward.
Hey, hi, Hari here.
Yes.
Aren't we introducing the role-based access in the service catalog in 12.8?
Yes.
It's in sync with the service desk roles, or it's a private, it's only particular to the catalog only?
So the role issue, right now when we move it to a portal world, it's likely we're going to elevate that role. When you're doing an implementation, you're going to elevate it up at one level and probably use single sign-on across them. But it remains the same that you need to sync the roles or otherwise align the roles between catalog and service desk and groups. So I sort of skipped over it at the beginning, but that's another area where I would like to make sure I get good input on the pain point. So alignment of groups and roles is one. I think it changes in the portal world with single sign-on. I'd like to know what people feel about that. Right now, the alignment requirements that we place on customers is more than we want to be doing, and we know that it's a burden. The other one is the access and pathing of attachments. So groups, roles, organizational structures, especially when we're talking about accounting and attachments, seem to be the highest priority areas. If people agree with that or have additional comments, I'd love to have feedback on those.
Yeah, this is Dennis. Maybe not directly to that, but as we're looking at 12.8, and it looks good what you're showing us and that capabilities and the future capabilities of the widgets or the portability of like little portlets from the catalog. Are we getting closer in the service management side to have like the whole product line ready to be upgraded? Because a lot of us have multiple products, EEM, ITPAM, catalog, service desk, assets, service assurance products that we could actually upgrade to 12.8 and have everything else ready to upgrade as well.
Yeah. The catalog, specific to the roadmap, I don't know if I got the slides here. We invested a lot in this release to start to decompose some things. So, I don't have it in this deck. So, for example, if you wanted to have a separate MDB for some reason, or if you need to be on 8.4 EEM for service desk, but 12 for catalog, we made it so that the migration is easier. We got data from customers that we're using in QA. We're trying to make that easier and easier. We're not 100% there yet. So there's other things. So, for example, if you've got one of the security products that has its own JBoss environment or a different Java environment, to share Java environments. So we sort of reduced the dependencies on silos packed together to try to open up catalog to be more open. Generally, it's a case where, service desk is the dog and we're the tail. So making it so that we can work to the service desk environment or work to the ITM environment or work to the PAM or the EM environment is something we've invested a lot in this release. Also things like single point of contact, for example, for PAM failover. So instead of sending the admin to PAM, we'll capture those errors and present it to the catalog admin. We'll also do things like retry, not just on a configured retry, but queue and restart if PAM goes down. So we put a lot of investment in for catalog to be in a solution world, not just catalog. I think that partially addresses it. I know there's things that are still to be done somewhere in there.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Is there any improvement to the service designer interface in the catalog?
And I didn't go into this. There's a complete, and actually people on this call will love these too. Service designer is completely rewritten. So there's a new UI that is, that our initial reactions to it are wonderful. You do the whole service design in one place, and it's tab wizard driven. So you don't go to another place to define the cost. You don't go to another place to define the form. You don't go to another place to define your CMDB integration. You don't go to another place. It's all in one place with tabs, defined as a form, not as a Excel-like interface. So building new services is good. The backward compatibility for old services to be edited in the new designer is all working fine. That's one that's huge. The other one is IXUtil has a UI, so it's no longer command line driven. There's a UI for importing and exporting, moving from test to production, moving pieces of something from test to production. So those are two significant in terms of total cost of ownership and ease of maintenance. I didn't cover them in this because we're really focused on the SPM catalog integration. Perhaps we can cover that on another call.
Thanks.
Do those two things sound good to you? I always take quiet as a yes. Any other questions before we wrap up for today?
Hey, John, what version are you showing right now? Is that 12.7?
This is 12.8.
Oh, okay.
Hi, this is Dennis again. How about for mobile users? Any improvements from the mobile user for the catalog?
So for the catalog, with 12.6 we introduced the PDA device approval in the email, one-click email approval, and we did some minor things on that. But in addition to Safari, which was introduced, we'll have Chrome, so that's fine on an iPad or for a larger device. If you think about the widget foundation, 12.8 becomes the foundation for mobile's application. So you can picture, if I can expose a widget of application services, what if I now expose this as a widget inside a jQuery or some app? So we're defining what that will be. Service Desk has some more specific things we can talk about, I think, coming up in terms of Service Desk integrations. We're also looking at how to best do this in terms of the technology to be as easy as possible for enterprises to adopt mobile apps. Approval, top of the list. Any category of request and any single request and status being the next on the list for catalog.
And from a Service Desk Manager perspective, mobility is very important to us. With 12.7, we introduced Chrome and Safari support. We introduced the capabilities of doing quite a bit on the iPad, not everything, but quite a bit on the iPad. We introduced the RESTful Web Services API set to allow customers, partners, whoever is be able to use the capabilities of a headless type of interface using REST as opposed to just a regular SOAP API. And then what we're working on right now, and again, everyone understand that what John and I are talking about are all futures. What we're working on right now is a mobility app that helps the analyst manage their inbound queues. And along with that, we're working on a mobility application to help people manage their tasks. Their tasks may be an approval, it may be something else, but tasks within the various workflow engines that are provided with Service Desk Manager, including the classic workflow, CA workflow, and the PAM workflow. So those are all things that we're working on right now, and we'll be hopefully doing some customer validation around those things in the very near future.
All right, great news.
Okay, Chris, do you want to flip back to the poll? If anyone hasn't entered the poll, we definitely so much appreciate these opportunities, and any topic you want to talk about, Christine knows she knows where we live.
Well, if we're still going and there's any topic, we're currently on Service Desk 12.5, and we're told that the reworking of the API in 12.7 is a blessing for everyone. How's the feedback on that from customers that are using 12.7?
With the RESTful web services?
Yes.
Okay. I've only heard a small handful of people that have really started to look at it. It would be considered sort of an advanced function, if you will. But the feedback that we've been getting is that, first of all, there's a lot of functionality in there. It's not like we just did, a small handful of things, for exposure. We expose a lot of stuff. I think over 600 objects, if I know the number off the top of my head. But there's a lot of stuff there, and because it's using REST, it really allows people to take advantage of all those capabilities where you're not having to have that constant communication back and forth. You can fetch the information, display it, wait for a response, and do the update. The majority of the feedback has been positive. There's been a little bit of not so positive just because it is something new, and there's folks that maybe just aren't as knowledgeable about how to take advantage of REST. We have provided an awful lot of documentation around the subject, and of course it's a standard, so there's lots of things out there that people can read. But the grand majority of the feedback has been positive. We haven't seen a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Output yet, either from customers or partners. I think one of our hopes is that partners will be able to take this and provide perhaps some very unique offerings for customers, either available for free or perhaps for a small fee. That'd be up to them. And then as customers become more comfortable with it, we'd love to see customers make this stuff known and available through the service management global user community, and really drive some almost a catalog, if you will. It's like, hey, here's a quick little down and dirty app that I built that does XYZ. Feel free to use it if you like. No guarantees, no support, but here's what I did. And we'd love to see the community start taking advantage of those types of things.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, John, there's no more questions in the Q&A. Christine, you want to wrap us up?
I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. When you do the panels, especially over the phone, you don't quite know how it's going to turn out, but I think this went really well. So thank you, everybody, for your participation, and thank you again, John and Roger, for putting this together and for your participation, in this call. I would like also to just put my email address up here again for the CA World giveaways. Again, there's one that's just going to be a drawing. You don't have to do anything. You can email me at my address here, christine.garner@elbitsystems-us.com to enter. And again, if you'd like to put yourself in to present in the January meeting, if your topic's selected, again, you will get a free CA World registration. So if that interests you and you can get your travel approved, please send that to me by end of business on Friday, November 16th. And we have a board meeting at the end of the month when we'll be selecting the winners. So if you can get that approved, again, just make sure you email me to get into that before November 16th. I'm sorry, November 16th. But that's all about all we have. Our next meeting will be in January. If we have anything that come up before then, we'll definitely communicate it out. As Roger and John were saying, if you have anything you think of about this call, like suggestions, improvements, or anything you want to see on your products, go on to the user group website, and there's an idea area there. And, like they were saying, that way you get community feedback, too, and some support from your peers, so development knows exactly, what the best options may be. So thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.